As part of the dissemination of knowledge in non-print form, today we bring to you on a topic chosen from the Organization Theory and Behavior course of MCOM first year, Managing Change. As we are all aware that there is only one thing which is of a real permanence, that is change in business organizations. All business organizations are open systems that continually interact with the external environments of which it is a part. If these environments undergo a change, the organization must also adapt to these changes in order to survive, grow and prosper. In this environment, there are subtle changes which have got implications and maybe certain times pose complications for the survival, prosperity and growth of all the business organizations. These demands are actually constantly changing, so organization must also change accordingly. In fact, the present day dictum is change or die. There are several forces that really warrant organizations to change in tune with the environmental changes. To mention a few, it could be technological changes in terms of technological advancements, it could be socio-cultural developments, political upheavals, economic exigencies, personal whims and fancies, personal weaknesses, personal fears, personal emotions and so on. When an organization intends to introduce a change, it has to understand the impact the proposed change is likely to leave or have on each one of these factors. Even after carefully considering the impacts that are likely to actually be created on each segment of these areas, in the context of a proposed change, there is every danger or a possibility that the people resist change. However, the manager's success and organization survival hinge upon introducing the proposed change with the least resistance from the concerned, that is the people who have to simply take and implement these changes which are actually proposed by the management of a given organization. In this background, we will try to understand and learn the concept of change, factors affecting change, that is factors influencing or causing some influence on the introduction part of the change as such, the process of change, the steps involved therein, the factors responsible for resistance to change. I am sure most of the people who welcome changes on their personal life or in their personal life would be the same persons who will definitely like to put their right foot down and say nothing doing, no change. That means in the official life we resist change, in the personal life we welcome change. That is a kind of dichotomy that exists within the same individual in a given context. Now, for discussing the several aspects relating to very emotional topic called change management or managing change in the context of a given business organization, I have two experts with me in the studios of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University. They are, to my immediate left, Dr.S.V.Sathyanarayana, and to his immediate left is T. Kumar. Both of them are associate professors in the Department of Commerce, Osmania University, Hyderabad. I would like to actually know the nuances of managing change, right. Much before that, I would like to know from Dr. S.V.Sathyanarayana as to why managing change in the context of an organization is assuming so much of importance. Now, what are the reasons for so much of importance being attached to managing change as a very subtle, simple, single important area in managing a business concern? Professor S.V.
Organizations are also living organisms. So, unless they adapt themselves to the changes that are taking place around them, for example, liberalization or globalization, whatever that we talk of, everything will influence the organizations. So, all these factors, what are the changes that are taking place in the society, around them, in the world. So, unless they watch the changes and introduce those changes in their organizations and make the people to prepared for taking adapting themselves to the changes, the organizations cannot survive in the today's world. So, that is one of the important reasons why the organizations must learn how to manage change in the organizations.
Yeah, I think that sums up the entire story as far as importance of change in the context of an organization is concerned. Now, I would like T. Krishna Kumar to tell me something about, of course, for the benefit of the viewers, what exactly is change in the context of an organization? How do you view change?
Simply speaking, change is nothing but any variation in the established way of life to which people they are accustomed in organizations. For example, sometimes we are asked to take a different route or a different way of doing things. I think sometime back I have seen here Ravindra Bharati. I think they have asked us to go, I think, in the middle of the road. I think buses they were asked to go at the end of the road. I think initially that caused some problems. So, what happens whenever there is a change, whenever there is a variation in the established way of doing things, I think that is what we simply call it as a change. It could be any alteration which occurs in the work environment of an organization when we discuss about this change management in the organization or management of change in the organization. This happens because of various environmental factors that are there in the organization and outside the organization.
Okay. You mean any change, any modification, alteration in the existing state of affairs is change, right? For a change, I would like to know from you, like there are several things which are controllable, which are uncontrollable, which are manageable, which are not manageable. So, these controllable variables are those which can be influenced by a managerial activity. There are certain things which are thrust upon us by the variables that lie outside the boundaries of an organization precisely. So, what exactly are the factors that really cause change?
As you have rightly pointed out, both the internal and external factors influence the organizations. Internal factors only drive, that means how to grow, how to enhance the value to the shareholder. So, these things every organization is interested in. And as far as external factors are concerned, so unless there are so many factors which are influencing, let us take economic factors for example. So many economic changes that are taking place today at a rapid pace, they are beyond the control of the organization. You take for example a simple thing like interest rates. So, they are now, earlier they were regulated, now interest rates are banks are given freedom to determine their own interest rates. That will have an influence on the cost of production of an organization. So, they do not know what is the rate of interest tomorrow, all floating interest rates are there. So, they must take these factors into consideration. Similarly, social factors. So, if you take the society, so many changes are taking place, joint family has gone, now nuclear families. So, and lot of importance is given to the education of the children, and children are given lot of prominence in the family. So, these things the organizations must learn when they tune their marketing practices, they must take these factors into consideration. Similarly, competition. Competition is not only from within the country, outside the country, entire world has become a global village. In that context, the companies have to compete with a company not only in India, but as far off company which is located in China or USA, they have to compete. So, how to reorient ourselves to compete with them, we have to understand. Similarly, technology is changing every day. P4 computer, now today P4 computer is there, tomorrow it will become outdated, P5 will come. So, this calls for innovation on the part of the companies. Companies have to innovate, every day they have to innovate, every day they have to change their process of production. So, when innovation is there, some sort of risk is involved. When you innovate, that innovation may be accepted by the people or rejected by the people. If they reject it, what will happen to the investment that you have made in the innovative process? So, that is another factor which the companies have to take into consideration. Then nature of workforce. So, today the workforce today is completely different from the workforce of earlier periods. So, now they are knowledge workers. So, it is very difficult to manage the workers who are having lot of knowledge. For example, in software companies, if we take, lot of attrition is taking place.
Yeah, would you like to add something in this context?
Yeah, in the context of organization behavior, what I feel, apart from managing technologies, apart from considering this world politics and economic thing, we have to concentrate more on the behavior of people, how the behavior of people is affected. And today we are managing different kinds of people in the organization. And with the advent of this compulsory retirement scheme and voluntary retirement schemes and all these things. Today you have a lot of people who are willing to work, experienced people who are willing to work. In our organizational behavior terms, we call them as the great generation that is available. And the presence of them makes a lot of difference in the organization. Then you have got people who are about 35, 40 years, we call them as baby boomers. They have experienced the prosperity of their life, and today they are facing a different kind of situation, and you have to manage them. And because a host of factors, they are affecting the interests of these people. Then you have people what we call them as X generation. Then you have people, you have got teenagers, and you have got about 20 people who are willing to work in the organizations, and in order to make some money to buy certain things, they are willing to work as part timers. And with this, I can tell you a lot of changes will come in the way the organization functions. Therefore, I can tell you that when you put under the category of social trends, you have got different generations you are supposed to manage. The presence of these different generations brings, I can tell you, radical changes in the way that we are functioning in the organization. For example, today you have to introduce a thing called flexi time. You have to introduce a compressed time. All this, that is how you have to manage the situation. And apart from this, we have come out from joint family system to nuclear family system.
Yeah, Professor was actually
he was mentioning about. And today there are people who have decided for the sake of their career not to marry, not to have children. And in a way, again the divorce rate is going up. And let me tell you, all these things will have a tremendous impact on the way people they are working in the organization. When you talk about change management, you have to manage the behavior of these people. I think in this context, I can tell you these factors they influence a lot.
Yeah, what I could gather from your expression, I mean yours and SP's is there are a host of factors. We can be categorized into social factors, cultural factors, economic factors, political factors, demographic factors, even the world politics, and the age composition and things like that. Now, the question here is true that the managing change or introduction of a change is influenced by several factors which have got different dimensions, but still they have got to manage. And as you rightly put it, I think managing change is managing people. Managing people means managing their feelings and emotions. Now, if you are able to actually get hold of them, I think in terms of managing change, I think you are successful. Now, the question in this particular context, which I would like Krishna Kumar to answer is, how do organizations cope with the change? I mean, it's a real challenge of change.
Yeah,
change itself is a big challenge before professional managers. Now, my question to you is, how do organizations cope with the change?
the first thing is, you can see what type of.
If you could actually, we want stability.
Yeah.
At the same time, we want change.
Yeah.
Now, how do you actually resolve this conflict?
I like to put it like this. So, if before a change comes suddenly, you have to see what type of changes that are taking place in the environment. You have to scan the environment, right? Down the line, 5 years, 10 years, what is going to happen? And slowly you try to introduce those changes in the organization. And this sort of change we call evolutionary changes, a slow change. And sometimes it so happens suddenly there will be a crash in the stock market or something happens. I think suddenly you have to change, there is no other way. You have to go, a thing like September 11, right? You have to manage, a revolutionary changes will be there. I think when you manage that kind of situation, that is called a revolutionary change. You are managing a revolutionary change. Sometimes when something occurs and you are managing, that is called a reactive change. Or something is going to happen, you have foreseen it and you are adapting yourself to these changes. That is what we call a proactive change. So, whatever it is, you have to plan for change. So, what is a planned change? And here what we call it as intentional and goal oriented change, that is what we call a planned change. And when you introduce what is called as linear, a continuous change, we call it as a first order change. On the other hand, when you try to bring change at multi-level, at multi-dimensional level and a discontinuous radical change, we call it as a second order change. I think this kind of classification we have to give from the perspective of organization behavior, but I think one thing is certain, you have to manage change by considering what we call it the task that takes place in the organization, their work. Then the structure, you have to see what kind of structure within which we are functioning, what kind of technologies we are using, and what kind of people we have, what kind of strategy we are adapting. So, when you are considering a change, what you have to consider is task, structure, technology, people and the type of strategy that we are adopting the organization, and based on this I think you can introduce, depending on the situation, the type of change in the organization.
Yeah, I think that's a good exposition on the typology of change. Like you have evolutionary changes, revolutionary changes, first order, second order, reactive, proactive. Now, I for one strongly feel that the managers, in order to be very successful in initiating change, must be proactive in their response to a particular challenge posed by an environment. Now, there could be actually in the past we used to have a situation where actually future was a clear projection of the past at a present day point of time. We used to take a lot of our experience in the past and we used to project that into future. It was almost the age of continuity. Yeah. Now, I think we are faced with the big challenge of age of discontinuity. That is a real big trouble. Now, in the age of discontinuity, where you talk about initiating change and in a very, very turbulent atmosphere as we witness in most of the business organizations in India and elsewhere in the world. But the question here is a very, very important question is, why do people resist change? Why? It is true, they resist change, but why?
Why? Maybe if I talk at individual level, maybe basically my ego, it comes into the picture, right? Why should I accept what somebody is saying? Or maybe it is my habit. Let us say somebody asked me to work in BPO, or where I have to work during night shift, and for me I think night sleep is very precious, but they say you have to work during night time, something affecting my habit immediately.
Fine.
I resist change because night time I do not want to work. Or maybe what I feel, because of the changes that are anticipated in the organization, I feel my security is adversely affected. Maybe I think till now everybody is considering me as a superman because they have a lot of knowledge and every knowledge is in my grip, and because of the advent of these computers, everything is put on the net. People, they will not come to me, everything is available on the net, and I lose my importance. In a way, psychologically I feel I am demoted because nobody is coming to me, nobody is caring for me. I feel my security is affected. Then maybe because of these computers, because I do not know computers, I think though it may be easy for me to learn, initial resistance, I feel I will be out of employment, right? I may not get employment. So this is what we call certain economic factors. That fear, it haunts me, and apart from this, I have to learn certain things whenever a change is initiated. Especially I can tell you these technological changes. I have to sit with my juniors. I maybe have to sit with young fellows. I have to learn about this computer, and I can tell you, whenever I am learning something, there will be anxiety. Why I should undergo this sort of anxiety? The fear of unknown. People, they may expect higher standards. People, they may laugh at me while I am learning. So adjusting to the new environment, I can tell you, as an individual, I get into these kind of things. And always in order to support my argument, I will have what is called selective information processing. Then threats to established power relationship, superior, subordinate. Okay. Maybe in the new organization structure, we may have to think about a flat organization structure. Too many hierarchies we may not be having. That also could be a reason to resisting the change. And the ultimate thing is finance. Maybe I want to introduce all kinds of changes, but there is no money to bring, and how to raise funds, this becomes a problem. So because of these reasons, many times people, they try to resist change in the organization. So ultimately, we will try to put all these categories into two things. Individually, as an individual I resist. There are a host of organizational factors which come in the way. That is what we call organizational resistance.
The resistance to change must be there, there is no doubt about it. People must resist change if you want to put the organization on the right track all the time, or if you do not want the organization to go off the tracks. It could be individual, it could be a group, it could be organization as a whole. As you said, you were talking in terms of the eternal triangle called PST, people, structure and definitely technology. Any change which is initiated at one particular thing, one of these three members of the triangle will definitely have its own impact on the other parts of the triangle. They actually get relayed to the other parts, they get ramified to other things. So, since they are actually interlinked, one cannot be insulated from the others, and when one change somewhere would definitely touch off related or other changes elsewhere. Fine. Whole thing tells me one important conclusion to be drawn, that is both organizations and members thereof would love to actually continue in their own comfort zone within quotes. Be it individuals, you do not want to come out of your comfort zone, like I have been doing a fine job on this for the last 20 years, and why is it that I am required to do something else? You were quoting the example of technology all the time. Computers, if I do not know anything else, and then naturally I have got to work on my computers, why should I do it? I was all right without computers also. So, basically it is a question of feeling insecure. You think since a new job is actually given to you, unless you become a master of that as you are right now, you feel your security in terms of your prestige, in terms of your recognition, in terms of your social needs is actually threatened. So, naturally as human beings we have got our own emotional traps which we get into most of the times. We resist change, fine, but do we actually stop with that resistance to change, or do we do something about this? Would you actually suggest a few measures? Now, before going to the measures, I would like Dr. Krishna Kumar to tell me something about the process of change. It could be the steps involved in change, like unfreezing. And
so, one thing is certain, you have to bring change, right, for the good of the organization.
No, the simple point is initiating, successfully introducing change is an inescapable fact of organizational life. You can't run away from the fact. It is a fact, right? Because and another interesting thing about managing change is something which does not really remain static. The change as such keeps changing all the time.
Correct.
So, ever changing nature of the change keeps you always on your guard. So, as a manager you have got to do this, no way, you can't escape that. But the question is, what is the process of change, what are the steps to be taken, and then what is the importance of each one of these?
I will try to sum up this entire process of change in 3 words. Not I actually, it is 11 suggested, and that I would like to explain. One is unfreezing, the second one is movement or change, and the third is refreezing. Unfreezing, movement and refreezing. So, whenever you want to bring change in the organization, first of all you have to make people to understand that they have to give up their old way of doing things. Very simple. There is no second opinion that how are you going to bring this sort of unfreezing? You can have I can tell you a positive motivation you try to first adopt. Try to link rewards. If you do in this way, if you learn these things, if you behave in this way, this is how you are going to be rewarded. Link reward. So, the second thing is change people, I think their physical setting, that also helps them a lot. Maybe till now they are in a particular group, put them all together in a different setting, maybe they try to change. And maybe there could be an organization, maybe an association, maybe a particular group which is making this person not to accept the change, which is making these people not to change. You identify that group, remove that kind of support, right, then these people slowly when the support goes, automatically they feel like changing. Or try to appreciate people who do things what is called correctly. There is a thing called catch them when they are right, instead of seeking people, catching people when they are wrong.
Catching them when they are right.
When they are right, and you catch those people who are right. So, when you are doing that, others they see them, others observe them, they learn. That means, when other people they are appreciated, some people they think that they too need that kind of experience, they too need that kind of appreciation. Or instead of humiliating people, try to appreciate others. When you appreciate others who are doing correct things or the intended way of doing things, and naturally these people also emulate in that particular way. So, this stage it is called unfreezing stage. Unfreezing means you are making people to give up old way of doing things. And the second stage we call it as movement, right. You should see people that they have to comply with the intended change. And the second thing is, sometimes it so happens we learn certain things, but we do not implement. So, we have to see that the change that we are intending, the training that we have given regarding changing, these things are internalized. And the third thing is, these people they identify themselves with the kind of change that has brought in the organization. And tomorrow, for example, if you still again if I go to the same example of technology, they can say, you appreciate a fellow who has learned computers, you tell them, this fellow is a computer savvy, right, he knows how to operate computer. Tomorrow, when you appreciate a few people like this, tomorrow people they may try to identify themselves as computer friendly people. I do not say computer expert, at least they try to identify themselves as computer friendly people. So, this is the second thing, it is called a movement. And third thing, we talk about rephrasing. Sometimes it happens when we are in the training program, everything looks wonderful and we want to go in that way. When we go back to our office, to our organization, to our places, we go back to our old ways of doing things. Therefore, at frequent intervals you should do a follow-up work, how they are faring. Maybe this is what we call refreezing, a positive reinforcement you have to give at frequent schedules. And if we can follow these 3 steps, unfreezing, movement or transforming, and third thing is called refreezing, I think we can achieve change, okay, in the organization.
That's a process. The first thing is you must actually make them understand the importance of changing the existing ways of doing things.
Right.
So that's number one. You ask them to move from the old one to the new one.
Right.
And thirdly, you have to actually make them stabilize
Right. 3 things.
in a particular thing,
Right.
right? I mean, give up your old habits, learn the new ones, and actually reinforce the new ways of doing things by frequently, periodically following it up. Fine. But in spite of all this, my real question is that has been really troubling me for the last 5 minutes. Now, you make them unfreeze, move and refreeze, but still this change which is constantly changing is not permanent. So, I have got to learn my new ways of doing things tomorrow, because the changes are taking place so fast that what becomes an innovation today is becoming definitely a history tomorrow. So, I have got to again unfreeze, move and refreeze. So, given the fact that you have got to move move others, move everything, fine, move about here and there. Now, do you think we can really suggest some measures to overcome this resistance to change? Somewhere you have got to put a stop to this. So, you have got to take some measures, initiate some kind of measures, remedial measures, in order to make them understand and then adapt. Now, what are those measures? I would love.
I think my friend.
The most important thing is attitude, not the quantum of change that is taking place in the society. That is not that important. Once you have the positive frame of mind that you have to change, you have to adapt to the change, adapt to the things that are taking place in the society, you will automatically change. So, once that positive frame of mind is developed in the individual, change will automatically follow.
I definitely thank Dr. S.V.Sathyanarayana and K. Krishna, who have come from Commerce Department of Usman University for their good exposition on managing change and the problems associated with initiating change, the process of change, the factors influencing change, rather warranting change sometimes. They just something happens somewhere and then it is forced upon you. I mean, you have no way, right? Government takes a decision that you have got to do this for me tomorrow onwards, and you have got to do this. There are certain individual factors which cause resistance, there are certain group factors, there are certain organizational barriers, there are certain emotional traps, there are certain structural deficiencies too. So, all these together would cause change in combination or all alone. Now, the kind of process that takes place in the organization in the context of managing change or introducing change, and the kind of measures that can be thought of by, of course, there is nothing like a prescriptive list of measures that could be taken by all and sundry all the time whenever they think of change. I mean, the importance of each one of these things would definitely change depending on the size, nature and the complexity and the history and the kind of situation which is actually operating in. So, I thank you very much for all your enlightened talk. Thanks very much.